Let's talk with your host, Reggie B. Come on, let's all join in. Free your voice, it's your choice, all right here. Ooh, Simply Straight Talk.
Okay, I don't want to alarm anybody, but knowledge is power. And on today's show, we are going to share some knowledge with you. With today's topic, the evolution of racism. There are things we know people can't say or do, but it doesn't mean they don't have other ways of showing it. Here's your host, Reggie, right here on Simply Straight Talk.
Hey, what's up, Simply Straight Talk family? This is your host, Reggie. And Amber, you are absolutely right. I think we do need to drop some knowledge on this conversation. As Amber said, we are talking about the evolution of racism, and we're also going to talk about discrimination. Because I think it's important that you understand both. Because I have heard people actually say, like, hey, you know, this person is expressing racism. And when really it's discrimination. And I've heard people say, like, look, this person is discriminating against me, when it wasn't discriminating. It was more racism. So we need to understand the two. But what we also want to talk about is, where is racism and discrimination today, and how racism and discrimination has evolved, and has the laws evolved enough to where it actually can help someone who actually does file a complaint of racial discrimination and racism. Because it's really tough. It's really tough because there are people who are experiencing this, but there is a challenge when you're doing this. There is a big challenge when you're trying to actually prove your case regarding being a victim of racism or someone who's a victim of discrimination. Now, first of all, let's get into the definition. Let's get a clear understanding, okay? Racism is prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against someone of a different race based on the belief that that person's race is superior, okay? They have this superiority complex, basically. Now, discrimination, okay, that is the unjust or prejudicial treatment of different categories of people or things, especially on the grounds of race, age, sex, or religion, gender. And this today is a big issue. It is a big issue. For those of you who keep in contact with the news and you stay up to date on what's going on in the world, you have this whole thing between the police departments and the black communities, transgenders who are now being beat up when they go out. That's why you find a lot of transgenders who believe that, hey, I'd rather just stay at home because it's dangerous. You have gays who are being beat up because of their sexual orientation. At one point you had people that was going around punching people that was elderly in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, just seeing that they can knock them out. And you still have the gender issue of people saying, I'm not going to hire you because you're a female, or I'm not going to hire you because you're a male, or this is a female oriented field, you shouldn't be here, or this is a male oriented field and a female shouldn't be there. So there's a lot of things going on in today's society that we are still dealing with. Now, you would think that the American history, and I've said this before, and I'm not afraid to back up what I say. America's history is filled with blood and violence. It is filled with racism and discrimination. That is no secret. That is well known. It is well documented. We have actually military men who served in World War I and World War II who were not recognized until the 2000s for their efforts. And some people still refuse to recognize their part in the war. And I've often talked about the Harlem Hellfighters. When they fought in the war, the United States of America sent a letter to France telling them, don't treat them like humans. Don't treat them like people. That was the United States of America doing that. Okay? So, and that's well documented. Look it up. Now, but you do have racism and discrimination, but what it has evolved into today is a form of racism and discrimination that is more discreet. Okay? So let's say, for instance, what's called covert racism. Now, covert racism is a form of racial discrimination that is disguised and subtle. Rather than public or obvious, is concealed in the fabric of society. Covert racism discriminates against individuals through unnoticeable or seemingly passive methods. Okay? And I have experienced that. But I experienced more what I'm going to talk about next, which is the indiscreet discrimination. Now, when we talk about indiscreet discrimination, I think more people experience this than they actually do the racism. Now, this is just my opinion. I'm not saying that either one doesn't exist, but like I said earlier, I feel like some people misunderstand the meaning and they may classify something as racism when in actuality, it's really discrimination. Now, indirect discrimination is when there's a practice, policy, or rule which applies to everyone in the same way, but it has a worse effect on some people than others. Now, the Equality Act says it puts you at a particular disadvantage. Now that, my friend, is something that we experience daily, depending on who you work for, what environment you're in. Okay, let's say, for example, now sometimes discrimination can be easy to spot. Okay, now for example, if a hotel turns you away, they say we don't book rooms for gay people. Okay, we don't. We don't book rooms for gay people. I'm sorry, we don't. Now that is blatant discrimination. Now, that's, but then there is a more indirect form of discrimination where a hotel would not say, like, listen, we don't rent we don't rent our rooms out to gays or blacks. Okay, so just don't come here. We're not going to give you a room. You come back, we're going to call the police. Now, that's a form of direct discrimination. Okay, that is blatant discrimination. Now, the subtle way for this to be done is you will simply be treated differently. You're going to get bad customer service. They're going to make you feel like, you're bothering them. And this isn't all in the effort to make you say, you know what, we don't want to stay here. We'll go somewhere else. They'll give you such a hard time, or they'll create so many rules, or they'll make it such a big deal for you to check in that you're just not going to want to stay. And the goal is not that they provide bad service, but they provide bad service to people that are gay, people that are black, if you're Hispanic, whoever they feel they want to discriminate against, they'll simply make it tougher for you. And all this is done indirectly because they're going to try to put it behind their policies or their procedures. And sometimes a lot of that stuff is fake, but the customer just has no idea. They have no idea that they're being discriminated against. But they will do whatever they can to make that person feel like, I don't want to stay here. You guys are rude. I'll go stay somewhere else. And if the management and staff is behind that, when you talk to a manager or a supervisor, they're going to maybe do a fake apology. But then again, well, unfortunately, we're booked up. We don't have any rooms. I'm sorry. And for you, if you go to try to complain about that, it is very difficult to say that this was discrimination because everybody's going to label it as bad customer service. So it would take more people who have had the same or similar experience to file a complaint to build a case. And that's why it is so tough when you're dealing with stuff like this. When you're dealing with indirect or covert racism, it is tough to prove. It is very tough to prove because you have to have multiple accounts of this activity taking place. And if you don't have that, then it's a challenge for everybody else to understand. Because when it comes to businesses, a lot of people say, well, you know what? People complain all the time. They're never happy. And especially with blacks, everybody accuses blacks of, not everybody, but there are some people who say, well, blacks always pull the race card. Okay. And that's not always the case. It's not always blacks pulling the race card. It's just that when you see 3 to 4 people who are checking in and they're of another race and they're not having any problems. But when you get to the counter, put it like this. Here's an example. Okay. Say you got 3 white couples that walk up to the counter. And when they walk up to the counter, it's like, hello, how are you doing? Welcome to the blah, blah hotel. Thank you for joining us today. How can I help you? A room? Oh, not a problem. Please wait right here. Would you like a glass of water or something? A bottle of water while you wait? All right. We'll get this right in for you. You'll be staying in this room and this room. All right. Everything looks okay? Please sign right here. How's your day going? Was everything safe getting in? Sure. Well, thank you for joining us. We welcome your stay. If you need anything, please feel free to contact us at the front desk, or just maybe stop one of our helpful staff members, and we want to make your stay as comfortable as possible. Now, that's how the first 3, say, white guests get greeted. Now, when a black couple comes up, it's more of a greeting like this. Can I help you? Yes, we would like to check in for a night. Do you have a reservation? Yes, I do. What's the name? John Jim. Okay, do you have a valid credit card? Yes. You have a valid ID? Yes. 1 second, please. Okay, we don't have any rooms on the first floor, so we're going to have to put you on the 3rd floor. Okay, sign right here. Sign right here. Here's your key, and you're in room 122. Have a good day. Now, you see the difference in those experiences. Now, like I said, I've experienced that. I've experienced where I've watched other people walk up to the counter that was a different race, and the total customer service was total opposite of what I've got. Mine was more like the second. They weren't blatantly rude, but they were not welcoming. And that is how, racism and discrimination has evolved. It has evolved, especially discrimination. It's now that when if a company or an employer doesn't want to hire you because of your gender, because you're a woman, because you're black, because you're Hispanic, because you're Asian, all they got to do is say we're going in another direction. We're looking for someone with a different skill set. We don't feel you was a good match. And it's tough to fight these things. It's tough to actually go in and say, look, I feel like I was not offered this opportunity because of this. And you will find it, especially when people are been with the company for a while and you're trying to go for a promotion and you put in for the job, say you want to be a human resources aide. Okay. Now, you got a bachelor's degree in human resources. Okay. You've been working administration as an admin assistant for over 4 to 5 years. So you have the administrative aid experience. You have a bachelor's degree in human resources, which is perfect for the job in which you're applying for the promotion to. But you apply for the job, and another young lady who's a security guard applies for the job. Now, she's been in security for the past couple of years, doesn't have a degree, but she gets the job. Now, tell me something. When you're looking at skill sets and resumes, what makes this person feel like the security guard, who probably knew people there or whatever, got the job, over this, the black lady who was a security guard, they hired for the job, but the Hispanic lady with all of the education and background was not hired for the job. Now, and the Hispanic lady was bilingual. So what is the purpose? Now, how do you balance that? How do you justify that? And the sad thing about it is we should not have to justify discrimination. We should not have to justify racism, because we have come into a time to where, when you're trying to fight discrimination and you're trying to fight racism, it is difficult. It's difficult because most companies are going to say, I need proof. What's your proof? And sometimes you have to try to figure out wow, how can I prove this? I know this is wrong. I know I'm being treated differently, but they're saying it's just the work. that comes with the job. They're saying it's in the job description. So how can I prove it? Well, you know what? Stay with us right here. When we come back, I'm going to tell you some ways that you can start making a trail to help protect yourself, to identify racism and discrimination in the workplace, and how you can use this to build your case if you're being mistreated by your employer, by a company, by a place you visit. Because after all is said and done, we're all humans. Everybody deserves to be treated fairly, and everybody deserves the knowledge. And I am going to share that knowledge with you right after this quick break.
Don't even think about it. We got more straight talk just for you. RM Viaging is a company based on life's journey and sharing life lessons with the world in the form of laughter and reflection, inspiring people to go after their dreams and not giving up on life. RM Viaging creates inspirational music and motivational speeches designed to motivate all age groups. Visit our website at www.rmviaging.com to hear samples of our music. You will also find motivational articles on our blog page titled New Life, New Mind Blog. We also have a weekly podcast hosted by Reggie called Simply Straight Talk, all on our website at www.rmviaging.com.
We're back with the conversation starter and the voice that works harder. Your host, Reggie.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Simply Straight Talk podcast. And as you know, today we are talking about the evolution of racism and discrimination. Yes, this is a hot topic in the United States right now, and it's probably a hot topic in other countries, but since I don't live in other countries, I can't speak for other countries. But I do hope that if there's someone in another country listening to this, that you definitely are able to get something out of this to maybe help you in your situation. And I just want to say that I love the show, but it's really sad that, we still have to have these discussions today in our day and age. But if you missed the first segment, as always, a brief overview. We talked about the definition of racism, which is prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against someone of a different race based on the belief that they are part of a superior race. We also talked about the definition of discrimination, the unjust or prejudicial treatment of different categories of people or things, especially on the grounds of race, age, sex, and religion. I totally bombed that. Okay. Now, on the flip side of things, we talked about covert racism. We talked about indirect discrimination. Now, when we talked about these two, it's basically that people are looking for a discreet way of acting out their racism or acting out a form of discrimination so that it's not blatant, so that it cannot be used against them. And believe it or not, a lot of companies are really smart. And I say that, that they are trained, they are prepped to know what to say. So you won't always have that direct form of discrimination, that direct form of racism thrown at you. But we did give an example earlier of what it is to experience indirect discrimination versus direct discrimination. Now, for this part of the show, I really want to talk about the importance of understanding that if you are someone who is a victim of racial discrimination, and you have to understand that you have to find a way to properly document this stuff. You have to find a way to make sure that you are clearly able to identify what the issue is. What is the discrimination that you're facing? What is the racism that you are facing? Because like I said, racism has evolved to a more discreet form of discrimination. So it's very difficult, as we said earlier, to take this to an HR department or to take it to a compliance officer or even to some state officials, because for them to understand what you're going through, they're not there. They don't see it. So they're dependent on you to explain it. And sometimes when you explain it, it's going to sound like Well, basically, they don't have a problem with racism or discrimination. It sounds like they're just not happy with their job. They don't like the work they have to do. Or they just seem to have a problem with the food at the restaurant or the customer service person at a hotel. And when truly, it's not just bad customer service. It's not a problem with the job. It is the fact that you truly are a victim of racism or discrimination. And like I said, people often get those misunderstood when they try to label it, when they say, I'm a victim of racism. Well, racism is not quite the same as discrimination, as you heard the definition, okay? So we got to be clear about that. And we want to make sure that if we are accusing someone of being a racist, if we're accusing someone of being discriminatory, we need to make sure that that is truly what it is, okay? We want to make sure that that is what it is. And we're not just angry or upset at the moment or the situation. So I want to be clear about that. But like I said, I want to give you some tips for how you can document racism and discrimination, whether it's in the job or whether it's outside and you're dealing with a company. All of these things are truly, truly important, okay? Some may sound simple, but honestly and truthfully, a lot of people don't pay attention and they don't do this. So when they try to bring it to somebody else's attention, everybody looks at them like they're crazy. So first off, I want to say, always keep any emails, letters, text messages, or phone records to support your case. Okay, if you got a boss, manager, or somebody from a company that's sending you crazy emails, you want to keep that because that is going to help support your case. If they've written you a letter or they're sending you text messages or any phone records, keep all of that. Keep all of it because that is what you're going to need. You're going to have, because you got to prove that this person is singling you out or singling your group out. So you need to be anything in those letters that will help you with that. You want to keep that because you got to show that there's a trend here, which brings me to my next point. You got to determine if any other individuals or group have had the same experiences as you have, because you going by yourself, they are always going to try to say, well, this may not be a discriminatory practice. It just may be a customer service practice, or it may be just you and an employer practice, misunderstanding. So you got to make sure, you got to determine, ask, hey, have you experienced this with this person? What is your relationship like with this person? Some people may be comfortable in telling you. Other people may not tell you, but you can't just ask all black people. You can't ask all white people. You have to ask everybody to get that insight. And I know that's kind of tough because sometimes you got to know who you can trust and who you can't trust that won't run back and say, oh, they questioning about you. So you got to be careful about that. Now, like I said, keep an accurate timeline with activities and dates. You need to know dates in which occurrence happens. If they told you that you had to stay after, but nobody had to stay after work, you need to keep a date of that. If each time you eat at this restaurant and this waitress is rude to you, messes up your order, keep dates and times of that stuff. You got to keep dates. I came in at this date, came in at that time. I can't, you got to keep that information. Any reports to HR or state officials, keep a copy of all records. And when you do submit your reports to HR, don't always just do a phone call. Send an email. Hey, can I have an update on this? Because if it doesn't get settled at your HR level, you may want to take it to your state level. So you can show the state, look, this is what I gave them. Here's the emails I sent to my HR department, and I've got absolutely no response. Now, if you're in a situation where you're at a job and your employer seems to be giving you the crappiest jobs of everybody else, what you got to do is you got to keep track of that. Every day or night that you're giving a work assignment, keep track of your work assignments, but take note of what other people's work assignments are too. Because if they're telling one person, hey, get 25 cones, but they're telling you, you need to go pull 35 boxes. If your workload is always double, if your workload is always harder, if say you're a shift of people, like say you're a race, you're all Hispanics, but the other shifts don't have Hispanics. Your shift is all Hispanics, or your shift, everybody on your shift has an accent. But it's for some reason, the manager or the supervisor has decided that your shift is going to do the dirtiest work, is going to do the hardest work, and it's going to get the worst of every project. And, it's going to make sure that basically anything you do is going to be a setup to failure. It's going to be a work project that they know you can't complete, Or they're going to give you multiple projects and say, oh, you got to do your evaluations, but you got to have all this completed. So it's always something to set you up for failure in some way. That is the main point. They want to see you fail so they can document, oh, they don't do this, they don't do that, they don't do this. And look for people that give you vague comments like, well, whenever you stayed here before, I heard you've been a problem. Oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that, sir. Can you please provide me with the dates and the information of what was the problems that occurred the last time I was here? Same thing for your jobs. If you got a manager, supervisor, employee that says, well, you know what? I'm very dissatisfied in your work. Well, sir, I'm sorry to hear that. Please provide me with the dates and times of when I failed or did not accomplish my task so I can make corrections or I can explain, if necessary, what needs to be done. See, you got to know how to talk. So that brings me to my last point, man. You got to speak clearly, and respectfully. Okay? Be clear and respectful in your communications back. Because one thing they always would try to do is say, you're an angry employer. You're an angry customer. Anything they can do to make your character look bad, to make it seem like you're just not a good person, is what they're going to do. Because if they know that you're the type of person that might file a complaint, they're going to do everything they can to make it seem like you're just hostile, you're just angry, you're just bitter. They're going to make it seem like they bent over backwards when they didn't. So you have to make sure that you cover yourself. Make sure that each one of those tips that I gave you that you use, and it really is documented, and it takes time. And I know a lot of people don't really want to do it, but you got to, because it's all about you protecting yourself. All right, we're going to take a quick break and we will be right back.
We'll be back with your host Reggie on Simply Straight Talk.
All right, Simply Straight Talk family, we want to return the love you have shown us back to you. Reggie will be giving away great prizes during certain Simply Straight Talk podcast shows, so make sure you subscribe and listen to the show for your chance to win. Just imagine being able to take 4 people to the movies, a free night in a hotel, a gift card with cash for a restaurant, or one of our Simply Straight Talk podcast shirts. There will be other prizes as well. For more information, visit our website at www.rmviaging.com and click on Simply Straight Talk Podcast in the menu.
Are you ready for the straight truth? Reggie, what's the final word for today?
Hey, everybody. Welcome back for the final thoughts of today. And we are talking about the evolution of racism, and we're also talking about discrimination. Now, there's so much I really wanted to say in this show. There was so much that I really wanted to cover. But like I said, well, as you know, my shows are 30 minutes long, and I can make them longer. I probably should have made this show a little bit longer. But the thing about it is, racism and discrimination, it needs to stop. And as I said in the show, unfortunately, we live in a day and time to where it is still prevalent. It is still real. It is still alive. People are still experiencing it. And it's really sad. But what I want to say that, we should all try to do our parts to live together as people, not as a race, but just as people, as human beings. And I know that we're not always going to be able to do that. We're not always going to be able to see eye to eye, but it should not be, our differences and our disagreements should not be based on racism and discrimination. It just shouldn't be. But as I was saying earlier, for those of you who are out there and you are dealing with some form of racism or discrimination, you're just going to have to carefully document everything that's going on. And make sure you keep accurate timelines of the activities that are being, placed against you. That's going to actually, that's making your life harder. That's a struggle, and unfortunately, when it comes to indirect discrimination, it can be very difficult to prove. But that is why I say, make sure that you're documenting everything. Make sure that you are keeping a track record of everything that's going on between your employer or a company or a place you visit just as a customer. If these things are going on and you recognize that it's not just you, but certain groups at a certain place are being treated a certain way, don't be afraid to say this is wrong. And it should not just be let's say if you see, a white person at a place and she's being treated differently because she's white, there's no reason blacks can't stand up and say, look, the way you're treating her is wrong. She has every right to shop here. She has every right to eat here. She has every right to get her hair done here. And it's the same thing with whites. If you see blacks being treated wrong, they got every right to eat here. They got every right to be here, to shop here, to do whatever. And that's the way we stop it. That's the way we actually put our foot down and let it be known that as a people, as the human race, we're not going to tolerate racism and discrimination from anybody. We have to be willing to look out for each other. We have to be willing to speak up. Because if there's only one race speaking up for themselves, nobody's going to listen. They're going to accuse that race of just playing a card. But if you got every race acting as a people, then you no longer can say this race. You're saying we as human beings do not tolerate this, and we will not support your company, your organization, your group, or whatever if this is your beliefs. If this is how you treat my friend, my neighbor, my fellow human being, my fellow American, my fellow Asian, my fellow friends in Japan, China, wherever you from. Racism and discrimination is wrong, it's painful, it's hurtful, and it takes away from everything and all of the love that God has wanted us to have for each other. So there is no reason for us to hate. There is no reason for us not to be able to coincide as people and do what's right to build a world, not just a race, a world of people that understand the importance of how everybody makes a difference in our society. And we have to come to that conclusion. We have to get that understanding. Because if we don't, if you cannot love your brother, then you cannot say you love God. How can you claim spiritual peace and love when you have hatred for somebody that's right there standing next to you and you dislike them all because of their race, their accent, their age, their sex? Is stupid. That means your faith or what you believe in is not real. Because if you truly believe in a higher power, if you truly believe in God, then you love everybody equally. Man, woman, gay, it doesn't matter. Hey, this is Reggie. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for tuning in to today's show. Be sure to subscribe for more motivational topics based on real-life conversations, and don't forget to rate, review, and share our show so we can continue to bring you the best in real-life conversations. Join us next week right here on Simply Straight Talk.
Simply Straight Talk with your host Reggie B. Come on, let's all join in. Free your voice, it's your choice, all right here. Oh, Simply Straight Talk.